Hey guys, tonight, we'll embark on a calm and gentle journey, a story of love that survives even beyond death. Before we begin, make your bed cozy, dim the lights, and allow your body to fully relax. Now, get completely comfortable, open your heart, and let yourself drift along this timeless, gentle tale. Let's begin. The road curved endlessly through mist. Lila had been driving for hours, following a trail of crumbling milestones that no longer carried numbers, only moss and time. The mountains rose like sleeping giants around her, their peaks veiled in slow-moving fog. The air smelled faintly of pine, damp soil, and something older, like forgotten paper and candle smoke. She didn't know what she was running from anymore. Maybe not running, just leaving. Her phone had lost signal miles ago. The last text she'd received was from her editor, reminding her to breathe, rest, and write when you're ready. But rest felt impossible. Ever since he left, ever since he disappeared, her nights had become heavier. Not sleepless, but filled with strange half-dreams, voices she couldn't name. By the time she saw the village, evening had begun to settle like a soft blanket over the hills. A narrow wooden sign stood at the curve of the road. The letters were faded, barely visible through the mist. Dunmere Hollow. A cluster of dim lights glowed ahead, flickering faintly through the fog. The cottages leaned close together, their roofs wet with dew, chimneys whispering faint trails of smoke into the sky. Lila parked by what looked like an inn, or maybe an old house turned into one. A bell above the door rang softly as she entered. Inside, the air was warm and heavy with the scent of wood smoke. An old woman sat behind a counter, knitting by candlelight. "Evening," she said, without looking up. "You're not from here." Lila smiled politely. "Just passing through. I rented a small cottage up the hill, the one near the stream." The woman's hands paused. "Oh," she murmured. "That one." Her eyes lifted slowly, pale and tired, like she'd seen 1,000 fogs roll in and out of this valley. "You'll want to keep your windows shut at night," she said softly. "The fog here remembers voices." Lila blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "I'm sorry." The woman shook her head, resuming her knitting. "Never mind. You'll see." The cottage wasn't far, maybe 10 minutes from the village square, but the walk felt longer in the thick, silvery mist. She carried her suitcase up the narrow path, boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. Owls hooted somewhere in the dark. The sound of running water echoed faintly ahead, the stream the woman had mentioned. When the cottage appeared, Lila stopped. It was smaller than she expected. Wooden, with ivy crawling up the sides, and a single candle glowing faintly through the window. A gate creaked as she pushed it open. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the air smelled of rain, dust, and something faintly sweet. Old roses, maybe. A small table stood near the fireplace, with a stack of books still resting there, spines faded by time. She brushed her fingers over the top one, its title nearly worn away. Collected Poems, Arin Vale. She remembered the name from somewhere, maybe one of her college anthologies. A poet from the 1800s, known for tragic love poems and an untimely death. But what was his book doing here? She unpacked slowly, letting the quiet fill the room. Every sound, her footsteps, the ticking clock, the whisper of wind through the cracks, seemed louder in the silence. When she lit a candle, its flame flickered as if greeting her. For a moment, she thought she heard a faint sigh near the window. Then nothing. She sat by the table, opened Arin Vale's book, and turned the brittle pages. Most of the poems were about love, distant, unreachable, always ending with loss. But one stood out, a poem titled The Whispering Cottage. "If she ever comes, tell her I waited. Tell her the ink still breathes, the paper still dreams. The candle has never gone out." The last line was underlined, in handwriting that wasn't printed. Someone had marked it, perhaps long after the book was written. Her skin prickled. She leaned back, listening to the wind. Somewhere outside, a gate creaked again. The sound of footsteps, slow, soft, moved past the door. She froze. No one knocked. Only the sound of the stream outside, and the wind brushing gently against the wooden walls. Lila tried to laugh at herself. It was just nerves, exhaustion, the eerie beauty of a forgotten place. Still, when she went to bed, she couldn't sleep, because from the other room, just faintly, she could hear something. A scratching sound, soft and rhythmic, like a pen moving slowly over paper. At dawn, the sound stopped. She rose quietly, heart heavy with unease, and walked to the desk by the window. There, in the pool of early light, lay a sheet of paper she hadn't seen before. It was old, edges yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were clear. "You found the cottage. I knew you would." And below it, a single name, written in delicate, almost tender script. The morning light came softly, a pale gold that moved across the walls like slow breath. Lila woke to the gentle rhythm of rain on the window pane. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the books, the candle, and the paper on the desk, the one that hadn't been there last night. The letter, the signature, Arin Vale. She sat up slowly, her heart heavy with both fear and wonder. The air in the cottage was still, yet somehow alive, as if the walls were holding their breath. Lila picked up the paper again. The ink was faded but not old enough to be ancient, as though written only days ago. The handwriting was elegant, looping gently, as if crafted by someone who believed every word mattered. She turned the page over. Nothing on the back. The rational part of her mind. The part that had edited hundreds of manuscripts and written countless essays. Insisted there had to be an explanation. Perhaps a leftover prop from the cottage's previous owner. Perhaps some eccentric local writer who enjoyed ghost stories. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that it had been waiting for her. After breakfast, a cup of tea and half a biscuit, she decided to explore the cottage more carefully. There was one main room, a small kitchen, a narrow hallway leading to a single bedroom, and an attic with a low ceiling. Dust drifted in the air like sleepy stars. Everywhere she looked, she found traces of someone else's life. Quills, dried ink bottles, folded papers, pressed flowers between pages. And on one shelf, an old wooden box. It was locked, but as she lifted it, a smaller envelope slid out from beneath it, landing softly on the floor. Her breath caught. It was sealed with wax, the same rose-shaped seal as before. She opened it with trembling fingers. "You hear the rain. That means you remember. I write each night, though no one replies. Still, I believe one day someone will." Below the words, a faint sketch, the outline of a woman by a window, her hair tangled in moonlight. Lila's throat tightened. She set the letter down, staring at it for a long moment, then whispered, "Who are you?" The candle beside her flickered. That evening, she stayed up late. She told herself it was just curiosity. She wanted to see if another letter would appear. But part of her knew she wasn't afraid anymore. She wanted to hear from him again. Outside, fog rolled in thick and slow, pressing against the window like soft hands. The rain turned into a light drizzle, and every drop seemed to echo faintly through the night. The air had that quiet before a whisper. When midnight came, the candle flame shivered. Lila's eyes were heavy with sleep when she heard it, a faint scratching sound. It came from the desk, like a pen dragging slowly across paper. She sat up. "Hello." No answer, only the steady rhythm of writing. She walked closer, heart pounding, each step deliberate. The sound stopped the moment she reached the desk. The paper was blank. Then, slowly, words began to appear. Not written, forming, as if invisible ink was being drawn into existence by the candle's glow. "Don't be afraid, Lila. I've waited so long to be heard." Her name, She gasped. She hadn't written it anywhere, hadn't told anyone here who she was. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. The ink shimmered faintly, then another line appeared. "Because you once wrote mine." Her hands trembled. "That's not possible." The ink bled softly into the paper, and the candle dimmed. But just before it went out, one last line appeared. "Love remembers what life forgets." Lila didn't sleep that night. The rain fell steadily, washing over the roof like a lullaby for something unseen. By morning, the letter was gone. Only the faint scent of roses lingered in the air. When she looked out the window, she saw footprints in the damp soil. One set leading away from the door, and next to the path, resting on the fence, was another sealed letter. The handwriting was the same, but this time it wasn't signed Arin Vale. It was signed with one word: yours. The rain had returned. Soft, endless, and strangely rhythmic, like a language made only of memory. Lila sat by the window, the day lost in mist. On the desk beside her lay 3 more letters, each appearing at dawn, each sealed with the same rose-shaped wax. At first, they had been distant, polite, reflective, almost ghostly. But now, they felt alive. Each line written as if it remembered her in ways she didn't yet understand. "You stand by the same window she did," one letter read. "You look out at the same hills. When you sigh, the air trembles like it once did for her." Lila traced the words with her fingertips. The ink felt warm, impossibly warm, as if it had just been written. Who was she? And why did every sentence feel like it was meant for her alone? That night, she lit a single candle and opened her journal. The flame moved gently, breathing with the room. Outside, the rain whispered against the glass, slow, patient, unending. She wrote, "If you can see me, tell me your name. If this is a dream, let it continue." She left the journal open and went to bed, listening to the sound of the rain until her thoughts dissolved into sleep. And then she saw him, a man, sitting by a wooden desk not unlike hers, his face hidden by shadow, his hand moving steadily across parchment. Candlelight spilled across his wrist, his ink, his sorrow. The air around him shimmered with something fragile, a grief too old to cry for. She took a step closer. "Who are you?" He didn't look up. His voice was quiet, like the echo of a thought. "I am what remains when a promise outlives the body." The candle flickered violently, and she woke with her heart pounding. The journal was no longer blank. Across the page, written in that same elegant handwriting, were the words, "You saw me." The following evenings blurred together like pages turned too quickly. The letters came more often now, sometimes 3 in a night, each one more intimate than the last, not in romance, but in recognition. He wrote of memories she had never lived, but somehow felt. "The rain began the night she left," one said. "I've written her name into every storm since. Now the rain returns with you." Another, "You hum in your sleep." The same tune she used to sing when she waited for me by the fire. Lila pressed a hand to her lips. She had been humming in her dreams, a tune she didn't know she knew. Days passed quietly. The villagers in the nearby town still spoke little, only nodding politely when she came to buy tea or candles. But once, as she was leaving the store, the old shopkeeper stopped her. "You're staying in the Vale Cottage?" Lila nodded. The woman's eyes softened. "Then, you'll start hearing the rain differently soon." "What do you mean?" The woman only smiled. "The poet's rain doesn't fall on everyone." That night, Lila dreamed again. This time, she was standing behind the man, close enough to see his reflection in the candle flame. He had kind eyes, lined by waiting. His pen trembled slightly as he wrote her name. "Lila," she whispered, "you know me." He turned, and for the first time, she saw his face fully, pale, gentle, hauntingly familiar. "I always have." The candle flickered out. Her breath caught. When she opened her eyes, the room around her was dark, but the desk glowed faintly, illuminated by a light that didn't belong to any lamp. On the desk lay a single letter. Now you remember the tune. Soon, you will remember the promise. At the bottom, a faint sketch. 2 figures standing in rain, holding the same candle flame between them. The next morning, Lila found her hands covered in ink. Fresh ink. Her fingertips were stained black as if she had been writing all night. But when she looked at her journal, the last page wasn't in her handwriting. It was his. The rain carries your name now, Lila. Do you hear it calling? Outside, the rain began again. And this time, it didn't sound like weather. It sounded like a voice. The storm came without warning. No thunder, no wind, just rain, soft, endless, remembering. Lila woke to its rhythm against the window, the kind of rain that sounded alive. It wasn't falling. It was whispering. At first, she thought it was the usual dream residue, the lingering aftertaste of the poet's voice from her sleep. But then she heard it again, clear as breath, woven into the sound of the rain. Lila. She froze. The room was dim, candlelight trembling beside the window. Outside, the mountains were lost in mist, only their faint outlines visible through the fog. The voice came again, low, gentle, almost shy. Do you remember the promise? Her heart stuttered. She pressed a hand to the window and gasped softly. Words were forming on the glass. Tiny beads of moisture had gathered into curved shapes, like handwriting written by the rain itself. It wasn't random condensation. It was language. She leaned closer. I waited through the winters. I wrote through the storms. The rain remembers what the heart refuses to forget. The letters shivered, then faded as the warmth of her hand met the cold glass. As if the message had finished saying what it came to say. She sat by the window the rest of the night, listening. No other sound in the world existed. Only rain, and a memory too old to belong to her. Somewhere in that sound, she could almost hear a melody, a faint tune played by the water's rhythm, one she had been humming in her dreams. It wasn't a song of sorrow. It was longing, patient and eternal. The next morning, she found a letter slid beneath her door. No footsteps. No sign of delivery, just that familiar wax seal shaped like a rose. Inside, the handwriting was slower this time, more deliberate, like someone writing from the edge of existence. You touched the rain last night. It remembered you. It will always find you now, through every storm, every silence. Once, I too stood at that window, writing words the sky would carry to her. Now, the sky carries mine to you. The letter ended there, but the paper smelled faintly of petrichor, the sweet scent of earth and memory. Days passed in quiet unease. The villagers avoided her eyes now. One evening, when she tried to ask the shopkeeper about the poet, the woman only whispered, "Some loves never dry, Mississippi. They just keep falling." "What do you mean?" But the woman only gave her a candle and said softly, "Keep this near your window when it rains. Light remembers light." That night, the storm came again. The candle flickered like a heartbeat. And with every gust of rain against the glass, more words began to bloom. Not random anymore, but poetry. She left in silence, but her footsteps stayed in the rain. Every drop knows her name. And so, when you came, the storm began again. The letters glowed faintly, traced in silver light before dissolving into fog. Lila's pulse trembled with disbelief and wonder. "Who are you?" she whispered. And then, like a sigh carried through the rain, came his reply. "Once I wrote for her. Now, I write through you." Her breath hitched. The room felt heavier, yet strangely tender, as if she were being watched not by eyes, but by memory itself. She went to her desk, lit another candle, and began writing on a blank page. "If this is your rain, tell me what you remember." She left the note open beside the window and fell asleep to the whisper of the storm. When she woke, her letter was gone, but in its place, a single page she had never seen before. The handwriting was his. I remember the way she looked at me the day the hills turned white with mist. I remember her promise that even if the world forgot her words, I would keep them alive in ink. Now you found that ink, Lila, and through you, she breathes again. She pressed the page to her chest. Tears came softly, not from fear, but from the weight of something ancient and beautiful. The rain outside grew softer, like it was listening too. In its rhythm, she could almost hear them. Two voices, long ago, whispering promises through storms. And somewhere deep inside her heart, a question took root. What if love was just another form of rain, falling again and again, until it found the soul meant to remember it? The morning mist hung over the valley like a secret the mountains refused to release. Lila walked through the village square, her footsteps muffled on the damp cobblestones. Every window was half-shuttered, as if the houses themselves were still dreaming. She had come to ask about the man whose words had begun haunting her nights, the poet whose name appeared again and again in the unsent letters. Arin. No one spoke his name easily. At the small tea house near the old church, Lila found a group of elders warming their hands by the stove. When she mentioned the cottage by the hill, their eyes flickered, not with fear, but with something quieter, pity. One of them, a frail woman with silver hair and trembling hands, finally said, "You've seen the letters, haven't you?" Lila hesitated. "Yes, they appear at night." The woman sighed. "Then you've met him, or what remains of him." Outside, the rain began again, gentle, rhythmic, almost like the ticking of a long-forgotten clock. The woman continued, her voice soft but steady. "His name was Arin Vale. He came here from the city nearly 100 years ago, a poet, young and full of words. He lived in that same cottage you found. Said the silence of the hills made the world listen to his heart." Another old man, staring into his cup of tea, added, "And that heart belonged to a woman named Alara." The sound of her name felt strange on Lila's lips. Alara. They say she was a painter, a dreamer, like him. They met by the lake, where the fog touches the water every dawn. He wrote for her. She painted for him. But love like that, the man paused, looking toward the rain-streaked window, never lasts long under mortal rules. Lila listened as the room filled with whispers, fragments of the same sorrow told by different voices. They were to be married in spring, one said. But before the blossoms bloomed, a fever swept through the valley. She died in the cottage, another murmured, while he was away reading his poetry to strangers. The first woman crossed herself, eyes glistening. They said when he returned and found her gone, he stopped speaking to the living. Every night, he sat at that window, the same one you sit beside now, and wrote letters to her. Letters he never sent, because he didn't know where to send them. A silence settled like snowfall. Lila whispered, "Did he ever stop?" "No," said the woman. They found him at his desk one morning, candles still burning, ink spilled across his sleeve. He had written a final letter. She looked up at Lila then, eyes reflecting the rain. It said only this: when the rain remembers her name, she will return to read the rest. That night, Lila returned to the cottage. The story of Arin and Alara clung to her like the mist itself, tender, tragic, unshakable. The rain began again, steady and soft. She lit the candle near the window and whispered, "Arin, is that why you're here?" For a moment, nothing. Then, a flicker in the flame. The pages on her desk rustled though the windows were closed. The topmost sheet began to fill with handwriting, smooth, elegant, like the others before. But this one began differently. "You know my name now? They told you the story, didn't they? They always leave out the truth." Lila's breath caught. She traced the ink with her trembling fingers. She did not die, not truly. Her soul lingers between brushstrokes. The last painting she made was never finished. That is where she waits, inside her art, as I wait in my words. A tear fell on the page. "And you?" Lila, you carry both. The rain calls you because it knows your heart still believes. I can only write through those who remember love the world has forgotten. The candlelight shimmered across the walls, revealing faint outlines of something new. A woman's silhouette painted in mist on the cracked plaster, head bowed, brush in hand. Lila turned slowly, eyes wide. The air smelled faintly of wet paint and roses. And for just a breath, she saw him. A man standing beside the window, his form translucent, his eyes filled with centuries of longing. He looked at her, not as a stranger, but as someone he'd been waiting for. "Do you see her too? Do you see her too?" he whispered. Lila nodded through tears. "Then help me finish what love left undone." The figure faded like candle smoke, but the words remained, a promise written between storms. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw two figures, a man with ink-stained hands, a woman with paint on her dress, standing together in the rain. Their faces blurred, but their hearts still reached for one another across time, across death, across silence. And as she drifted into uneasy dreams, the rain whispered their names again. Arin and Lila. The morning came slow, wrapped in silver fog. The cottage felt heavier somehow, as though the air itself remembered what the rain had said. Lila woke to the soft hiss of water against the window, her breath forming little ghosts on the glass. The candle from the night before still burned, its flame unnaturally steady. On the desk beside it, among the scattered letters, lay a small leather-bound book she hadn't noticed before. Its cover was cracked and darkened by age, the pages edged in gold that time had nearly erased. It was Arin's journal. When she opened it, the scent of old ink filled the air. The first few pages were written in an elegant, looping hand. His poems, his thoughts, fragments of letters that never reached anyone. But halfway through, the writing stopped. The rest was blank. Lila ran her fingertips across the empty pages. Something about them pulsed faintly under her touch, like a slow heartbeat trapped in paper. She whispered, almost afraid to hear her own voice. "Is this what you want me to do, Arin?" No answer came. Only the sound of the rain, soft, constant, whispering against the windows like words without form. That night, she sat at the desk again. The candle burned lower, shadows stretching long across the floorboards. She dipped the pen into the inkwell that never seemed to dry and began to write. "I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, I'll listen." The ink bled slowly into the paper. As she wrote, the fog outside seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her breath. Somewhere in the distance, a faint hum rose, low, resonant, like the memory of a voice. "They told me you waited for her, that your love never ended. Maybe that's why I'm here. Maybe I'm supposed to finish what was left behind." A chill passed through the room. The candle flickered violently, then steadied. On the page below her writing, a new line appeared, written in that same elegant hand she'd seen before. Every word builds a bridge. "Keep writing." Lila gasped, the pen slipping from her fingers. Ink splattered across the wood, forming shapes that almost looked like letters. "You're here," she whispered. And though no one stood in front of her, she felt it. A presence near her shoulder, quiet and watchful. The faint warmth of someone who wasn't supposed to exist. Hours passed. The rain softened into mist, and the night deepened until time itself felt irrelevant. Lila kept writing. Each word flowed like water, not from her thoughts, but from somewhere deeper. She wrote of longing, of dreams that never ended, of love that refused to die. Sometimes she stopped, trembling, when her sentences began to change on their own, the ink rearranging itself, forming new phrases that were not hers. "Do you see her when you close your eyes? The bridge is not built with words alone. One of us must cross." She stared at the page, heart pounding. "What does that mean?" she whispered. But the ink remained still. The next day, the fog refused to lift. Lila left the cottage for the first time in days, needing air, needing distance. The village lay quiet. Even the usual voices, the shopkeepers, the fishermen, the old woman at the tea house, were gone. It was as though the town itself held its breath. When she returned to the cottage, she found something new on the table. A pressed flower, pale, blue, and perfectly preserved, placed between the pages of Arin's journal. It hadn't been there before. Underneath it, a faint message shimmered in the candlelight. She waits where the words end. Lila traced the words with trembling fingers. The candle flickered, and for an instant, she saw a shadow behind her, the outline of a man at the desk, writing with her hand. The air hummed. The pages fluttered open to the final blank leaf, as if inviting her. She lifted the pen again, her voice barely above a whisper. If I keep writing, will it bring her back? The ink trembled before forming another line. It will bring us all back. The rain began again, gentle but endless, falling like whispered promises on the old roof. Lila wrote until her eyes blurred and her breath slowed. At times she felt her pulse and the flicker of the candle become one. She didn't notice when her hand stopped obeying her, when the ink began to move before she touched it, when her reflection in the window began to fade, just slightly, as if she were becoming less solid, less here. By dawn, the journal lay closed on the desk. The candle had burned out, but a faint blue glow lingered around the pages. On the last written line were words neither fully his nor hers. Between us, the bridge is complete. Outside, the fog thinned for the first time in days. For just a heartbeat, the sun almost broke through, and if one looked closely at the window, they could see, just for an instant, a man and a woman sitting side by side, their hands touching, writing together in silence. Then the light faded, and the cottage fell quiet again. The night arrived quietly, almost reverently. Fog pressed softly against the cottage walls, curling around the windows like a silken veil. The candle on the desk burned low, its flame trembling as if it too held its breath. Lila's eyelids grew heavy, but sleep didn't come gently. Instead, it pulled her slowly, like walking into a river that whispered, "Follow me." When her eyes closed, the world changed. She found herself standing in the cottage, or rather, a version of it she didn't recognize. The walls were alive with color, shadows painting themselves across corners and shelves. The candle on the desk glowed brighter than the sun, yet cast no warmth. And there, seated at the desk, was a man. Arin, not the faded, translucent figure she had glimpsed before, but alive, whole, with eyes deep as midnight skies and hands ink-stained from endless writing. "You're here," he whispered, and the words felt like the rain itself, dripping into her chest. I am," Lila said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if this is dream or what it is." He smiled softly, almost sadly. "This is where the worlds meet, where memory and longing bend, where words can become bridges and love can remember itself." The room shifted. One moment, she was in the familiar cottage. The next, she saw a field bathed in silver light. A younger Arin riding beneath an oak tree, Alara's laughter echoing across the hills. A brushstroke of a woman, alive, moving, smiling, unfinished, incomplete, yet impossibly real. Flashes, memories she had never lived but somehow knew. Arin and Alara, hand in hand, walking through fog-laden streets. Ink spilling onto paper, paint dripping onto canvas. Promises whispered into the mist. "Do you see?" he asked. "I never stopped waiting. Even death cannot erase love like this." Lila stepped closer, tears streaking down her face. "I feel it. I feel everything, through you, through them, through the rain." The candle flame shivered, then multiplied. Shadows and light danced around them, each flicker revealing moments from another lifetime. She reached out, and for the first time, she could touch him. His hand was warm, solid, alive, yet somehow also part of something larger, something eternal. "I have waited so long," Arin said softly. "Through letters, through ink, through rain, and now you are here." The air seemed to hum with whispers of past love, soft as breath. Memories folded over themselves, the ache of waiting, the joy of reunion, the grief that had never left. And yet, for the first time in centuries, it felt whole. Lila realized that each letter, each word she had written, each echo of the rain, had been drawing her to this moment. Not as a visitor, not as a stranger, but as a part of the bridge he had built with ink and longing. They sat together by the candlelight, hands touching across the desk. Time slowed, dissolved, and then vanished. "This is where we meet again," he whispered, "where words become life, and life becomes memory." The cottage pulsed gently, breathing with them. Shadows stretched and softened. Rain tapped the windows in quiet applause. And in the candle's glow, Lila could see Alara, the muse, the painter, smiling softly, finally at peace. She understood. This was the eternal reunion. The letters, the journal, the rain, the candle, everything had been leading to this convergence. They did not speak, yet every glance carried centuries of longing. Every breath carried promises kept, and every heartbeat carried love that had survived death itself. The night deepened around them, but within the cottage, time no longer mattered. Love, she realized, was patient. It waited through storms, through ink, through forgotten lives, until it found a heart willing to remember. And in that room, bathed in candlelight and memory, Lila and Arin existed together. Beyond fear, beyond loss, beyond the limits of the mortal world. The moon hung low over the misty hills, casting silver light across the cottage. Inside, the candle flickered softly on the desk, but it could not compete with the ethereal glow emanating from the open journal. Arin stood beside Lila, pale and trembling with centuries of longing. His eyes were fixed on the blank page, inkpot nearby, untouched, yet somehow alive. You want me to write it?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his hand hovering over the page. "This is the poem I promised her, the one I never finished. It was meant for Alara, but now it must live through you." The room seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain-soaked earth, mingled with the faint trace of old ink and roses. Lila picked up the pen, and it felt heavier than any she had ever held, as if it carried the weight of all the words Arin had written in a lifetime. She placed it against the page. The ink shimmered under the moonlight, glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The first line appeared, as if it already knew what to say. "I waited beyond the edges of time, through storms, through silence, through letters unsent and nights uncounted." Her hand moved on its own, guided by something older than memory, older than life itself. Words flowed from her, but they were not hers alone. They were Arin's, Alara's, the rain's, and somehow, the hills themselves. "For the brush of your hand, the whisper of your voice, the echo of a love that death could not claim." The candlelight flickered across the walls, and shadows stretched long and soft. She could feel Arin's presence behind her, steady and comforting, breathing life into every syllable. With each line, the room grew warmer, the air more vibrant, alive with the spirit of the poem itself. If words could hold a soul, then these pages hold mine, waiting for the day our hearts meet, beyond all sorrow, beyond all time. When she reached the final line, her hand froze. The pen hovered above the page, quivering. Moonlight spilled across the desk, illuminating the ink, and she saw it, the poem complete, glowing faintly, as though alive. Arin's eyes glimmered with tears. "Read it," he whispered. Lila's voice trembled as she spoke the lines aloud. the words flowing over her lips like water over stone. I will find you in every storm. I will hold you in every shadow, and I will love you until the end of everything that breathes. The room grew impossibly still. The candle's flame pulsed once, then steadied. The journal glowed faintly, then dimmed, leaving the page shimmering with silver light. Arin took a step closer. His form wavered like mist, yet warmth radiated from him. Now it is finished, he whispered. My words are complete, and I can rest. Lila's heart ached, but she understood. The poem had bridged the gap between life and death, between longing and fulfillment. It had finally returned Arin to where he belonged. And yet, through the words, a part of him remained with her, alive in the ink and the rain, in the candlelight and the hills. The next morning, the cottage was empty. The candle burned down to a stub. The journal lay closed, the last letter written in handwriting that shimmered faintly in the morning light. But on the windowsill, facing the misty hills, a single rose petal remained. Soft, fragile, yet eternal. Lila pressed her fingers against it. And in that moment, she understood. Love had survived. Beyond time, beyond death. And through her, it would continue to speak. The candle flickered low, casting long, trembling shadows across the cottage walls. The rain had slowed to a whisper outside, leaving only a soft mist clinging to the windows. Lila's hands hovered above the last page of the journal. She had written every word Arin's spirit had guided her to write, the poem now complete, luminous in the faint moonlight. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then, she felt it, a warmth curling around her shoulders, a presence closer than breath. Arin was there, not fully solid, not fully absent. A shimmer of light, a pulse of air, a scent of ink and roses. It is finished, he whispered, voice barely more than the hum of the candle. Lila exhaled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I did it, she said softly. You can rest now. He nodded. And in that motion, the air seemed to bend. The candlelight flickered violently for a moment, then steadied. Arin leaned closer, closer than she could ever have imagined. Their foreheads touched across space and time, not quite physical, but not merely spectral either. His lips hovered near hers, and she felt it. The brush of a kiss, gentle, fleeting, carrying centuries of longing. Then he was gone. The room felt empty at first, but something lingered. Lila blinked, startled. Her reflection in the window was different. The eyes staring back at her were not hers alone. They were Arin's. Deep, steady, alive, carrying the weight of all he had ever felt. And yet, they were hers too, intertwined, merged in a way that defied explanation. She pressed her hand to the glass. The mist outside swirled like smoke, forming shapes almost familiar. A man at a desk, a woman with a brush, the hills bathed in silver fog. A soft breeze whispered through the cottage. I am part of you now, Arin's voice seemed to say, echoing in her mind. And through you, I will always exist. Lila's breath caught. It was a kiss beyond life, beyond death, beyond all the boundaries she had ever known. The poem, the journal, the candlelight, all had been a bridge. And now, the bridge was complete. She looked down at the pages. The ink shimmered faintly, as if alive, as if Arin's presence still lingered in every stroke. For the first time in years, the hills outside seemed alive, the fog not heavy, but soft and welcoming. The rain had returned, gentle and rhythmic, carrying whispers only she could hear. And in her reflection, she saw it clearly. The soul of the poet, the memory of the muse, the love that had survived every end. She was no longer alone. He was within her, and through her, he would never truly leave. The candle flickered one last time, then steadied. The journal lay closed. The cottage was quiet, but in every misted window, in every shadowed corner, in the soft patter of the rain, their story continued. Unbroken, eternal, and alive. Fog rolled over the hills like a thick, silver curtain, muting the world beneath it. Lila had long since left the village, but the cottage remained, quiet, waiting, timeless. Its windows were shuttered, save for one, where the faint glow of candlelight seemed almost permanent, though no flame flickered inside. The hills held their secrets well, but they could not stop the next traveler from finding the path. He came slowly, hesitating at the edge of the meadow, the mist curling around his legs. The village behind him was empty, silent as though it too were holding its breath. A journal in his hand, a notebook for sketching, a restless curiosity guiding him forward. He did not yet know the story waiting for him. The cottage appeared through the fog, more alive than the air around it, yet strangely still. He approached the wooden door, noticing a single envelope placed on the windowsill, sealed with a pressed rose. "For you," a whisper seemed to drift through the mist. The man lifted the envelope carefully, feeling a pulse of energy from the paper, gentle, insistent, alive. He broke the wax seal. Inside, the letter was written in elegant, flowing handwriting. "Welcome. You have arrived. Love never dies here. Read carefully and follow where it leads. Do not fear the mist, nor the candle, nor the shadows. They are all part of the bridge." Lila and Arin. A chill ran down his spine, yet it was not unpleasant. It was a thrill, a pull, a promise that something extraordinary awaited him inside the walls of the cottage. The candlelight flickered to life as he entered, though no match had been struck. The air smelled faintly of rain and old ink, a mixture both comforting and otherworldly. He saw the desk where the journal lay open, waiting for a new hand, a new heart willing to continue the story. Shadows moved softly along the walls, forming shapes that reminded him of lovers. In the soft patter of the rain, their story continued. Unbroken, eternal, and alive. Fog rolled over the hills like a thick, silver curtain, muting the world beneath it. Lila had long since left the village, but the cottage remained, quiet, waiting, timeless. Its windows were shuttered, save for one, where the faint glow of candlelight seemed almost permanent, though no flame flickered inside. The hills held their secrets well, but they could not stop the next traveler from finding the path. He came slowly, hesitating at the edge of the meadow, the mist curling around his legs. The village behind him was empty, silent as though it too were holding its breath. A journal in his hand, a notebook for sketching, a restless curiosity guiding him forward. He did not yet know the story waiting for him. The cottage appeared through the fog, more alive than the air around it, yet strangely still. He approached the wooden door, noticing a single envelope placed on the windowsill, sealed with a pressed rose. "For you," a whisper seemed to drift through the mist. The man lifted the envelope carefully, feeling a pulse of energy from the paper, gentle, insistent, alive. He broke the wax seal. Inside, the letter was written in elegant, flowing handwriting. "Welcome. You have arrived. Love never dies here. Read carefully and follow where it leads. Do not fear the mist, nor the candle, nor the shadows. They are all part of the bridge." Lila and Arin. A chill ran down his spine, yet it was not unpleasant. It was a thrill, a pull, a promise that something extraordinary awaited him inside the walls of the cottage. The candlelight flickered to life as he entered, though no match had been struck. The air smelled faintly of rain and old ink, a mixture both comforting and otherworldly. He saw the desk where the journal lay open, waiting for a new hand, a new heart willing to continue the story. Shadows moved softly along the walls, forming shapes that reminded him of lovers.